Hi, we're here this afternoon with Don Shelby, one of our keynote speakers for our 10th annual Child Care Professional Institute here in Zion Lutheran Church in Chisago City, Minnesota. Don, we asked you to be here for this momentous celebratory event because we as child care professionals have found the notion of kids being outside to be very important to their development. And we understand that you have really found some passion in that area. Could you explain how you come to that passion?
Journalists aren't supposed to be objective and sort of middle of the road, fly on the wall kind of people. And you go where the facts take you. You don't come to a set of facts in sort of a scientific way with a presupposition that something is going to be a certain way, because then you have a tendency to find only those facts which support your opinion. And it's called a confirmation bias. So journalists try to avoid that, and I've always avoided that. However, some people would call me an advocacy journalist because I end up advocating for certain things, but only after the facts have made themselves so apparent and so clear that there is no other side to the question. So as an example, are there two sides to the question of the sexual abuse of children? No, there are two sides. The evidence only has a suggestion that the one side is true. And so was it okay for me then to advocate against the sexual abuse of children? Certainly. So that was based on research that came to us, plus what is obviously apparent in one's own mind. But all things are not quite that simple. So on the issue of the effect of nature on children, that was all based on journalistic research. What do the facts say about it? Not what do I romantically think, not what I bring to it in terms of my own background and my own interest in nature, not trying to propose a supposition that is based on my own desires for children, but what do the facts say? And the facts, as they've been compiled over the past 20 years, show that children are suffering as a result of their detachment from the natural world, where they have replaced the artificial, used the artificial instead of the real, with 46 hours as an average of screen time, where people are looking at internet and watching cable television and working on computers and iPads and iPhones, that a child can watch a documentary on the Serengeti, for instance, and then you can ask that child, would you like to go to the Serengeti? And they say, no, I've seen it. That's a change, and that's an important change, because that means they have replaced the artificial with the real. Whether they have an interest in going to the Serengeti or not is not the important point in terms of a child's development. The longitudinal research that has been done shows that there are incredible healthful benefits as a result of a child's connection to nature. There are physiological benefits, there are psychological benefits, mental health benefits, and children in control groups who are not in nature suffer by comparison to those who are in nature. Those who are in nature have a tendency to be less stressed. They are more cooperative. They are better problem solvers. They are more eager to learn as a group. And so as the science has unfolded in this, and this is a fairly recent piece of information, it was all cognitive before. We just kind of thought that that was probably the case, because our mothers told us go out and play outside.
Anecdotal, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes. And
so now the research is pouring in and coming in very quickly that says that children who are not, for whatever reason, being given the opportunity to have a relationship with nature are suffering as a result.
Some different words come to mind as well with some other readings that I've done. The words being Wissenschaft and Kenntnis. And those words to me, Wissenschaft having just the knowledge of it, but you really need to understand it. Your example of the Serengeti, you can't really understand that unless you go there.
And you can't smell it.
You can't smell it, you can't feel it, you can't taste it.
Right.
And we miss a lot of
And
that.
you only see what's in the frame of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Very seldom does it, for photographic reasons and artistic reasons, very seldom will the camera go where your eye goes. Will you look up at the night sky and see more stars than you ever thought existed? That you have never before considered yourself food. That is an eye-opening experience when you know that you are down. You're not the apex predator in the Serengeti. It changes the way you look at life, even for a child. And that's not anecdotal. That's absolutely biological. We begin to employ, when we're in nature, more of our senses. People say we only have the senses of touch, smell, sight, hearing, etc. But there is research that say no, the human being actually has more than 20 senses. 20. But they're atavistic. We have not used those senses because we haven't had a need for those senses. But they're valuable. So they have atrophied, these senses. The proximity sense. These things have gone away from us. And by being in nature, we employ more of our senses. The senses that we rely on are heightened. Our awareness is heightened. And that means there's more information going into our cerebral cortex and our frontal lobes, and gives us more to process. And the more we have to process, generally tends to result in a better outcome, requiring our thinking.
So is this being outside something we need to be intentional about, doing something specific, or is it simply the act of being outside that could address some of these atrophied senses?
There are surveys and research papers that have been done about what's called the built environment as opposed to the natural environment, where they have said, is it just being outside? There are benefits from just being outside. Sunlight. The amount of vitamin D deficiency in children today and in adults is incredible because, well, the sun causes cancer, so let's not let anybody go outside in the sun. And the sun helps us produce that vitamin D. Being outside will help us in that regard, in that small way. But being outside in a built environment, when they have compared that control group to the independent variable of people who are outside, not in a human-built environment, their benefits far outweigh those who are just outside in the built environment. So the natural environment has something going for it that the outdoor built environment doesn't have.
So really, we could help our children do better, be more successful in school, academically, socially, cognitively, every way, if we would earlier on, for example, start them outside. And environmental education is a term that comes to mind, but I think it's more than that. There's a literacy, there's a feeling of just being out there, where we could simply redo all of our curriculum in the build world and transfer it outside.
I think that that's true, and I think that the research would support you on that. The concern that a lot of people have is it safe out there?
What do you mean by safe?
Is it safe? We played, until somebody told us to come home and it was dark. I don't remember my mother worrying that I would be kidnapped.
Neither.
And I think I take some responsibility as a member of the Fourth Estate and the media that has made a living out of scaring the bejabbers out of people. And we think our children are going to be taken away from us, and we highlight the terrible circumstances in which children are harmed outside. And so we keep them inside. But when we keep them inside, that's only the shelter. What we lose in understanding philosophically is that the outside world is actually our home. And there's a duality that's always been argued that humans are separate from nature, when in fact humans are a part of nature. And so we're being taken away from that, which is something that is elemental to our comfort, to our sense of ourselves, to our sense of our futures. And as an example, if it were an indoor circumstance, if you can just add some elements of nature, that is a view out the window of nature, even though that's a built environment, if there's access to a natural view, then performance increases. There was a recent study on reading acuity for remedial students who were trying to get up to grade level. And they kept one control group in a normal classroom under phosphorescent light, as 99% of the classrooms are, and they put one group, randomly chosen, which was the independent y-axis, basically. They put them on the in a room that had all windows on the north side of the building, so all natural light came in.
Okay.
And so they read in the natural light, and these people read in the room with the artificial light. This group showed a 70% improvement of reading acuity in 1 year, reading in natural light.
That's tremendous.
And so these are facts. You say, no, I don't know why that's true. I don't know what happens to the photons in the eyes under that spectrum of light. That's for scientists to figure out. Or it could be simpler than that. It could be that that's where we learn to see. And that is the most comfortable way for the pathways of the brain to function under those natural circumstances.
So we have, as educators and those who care for children, I think quite a ways to go in our understanding of what is good for kids. We have a lot of things that are termed developmentally appropriate practice. We honestly believe they're good for kids, and I don't say that they're necessarily detrimental, but I think we could do more of a service by having them outside more, or as you say, bringing it in. We need to be aware of the power that our environment holds over us, not only our children, but ourselves as well.
Is a room your world?
It's not my world.
No.
My entire world? No.
We build our houses, we love our houses, and that's all fundamental, that everything has a structure, everything has a habitat, insects, microbes, rabbits, everything finds a structure. But once we have no need for that immediately, and then the rest of the time is spent in the world. Now, you can take that in any number of ways. There was a great piece of work done by William Cronin out of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who held over 2 years a seminar, a sabbatical, for the best nature thinkers in the world. And they asked, what is nature? Great question. I've asked that question of some of the brightest students in the field, and I haven't found any individuals who agree. They give the strange answers. Some call it entropy, some call it the non-human environment. Ecologists have a different concept of it. Theologians have a different concept of what nature is. But in the second year, there was an individual who hadn't contributed much to the group, and they asked him, what is nature? And he said, give me an example of what nature is. And he said, Manhattan. I said, well, wait a minute, Manhattan's nothing but skyscrapers and hospitals and taxis and people running about being crazy and working. He said, right. But tell me, I will leave the room and divorce myself from this group and contribute no more if anyone in this room can tell me the fundamental difference between Manhattan and a termite mound.
Interesting.
And nobody could. They said, sit back down and tell us what you're thinking.
Okay.
And so that was the built environment. But everything has a built environment. The termite has a built environment. The prairie dog has a built environment. The spider has a built environment. So we should not eschew the built environment, because that is us, as a part of nature, creating an environment for us from the environment.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean we turn our back on nature. We don't turn our back on that because the spider doesn't. The spider is reliant on nature. We forget that we're reliant on nature.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we have is reliant on natural resources. It can be theologic. People can talk about it in those terms, but as the garden, for instance. But beyond all of those things, which are anecdotal, which are backstories that we create for ourselves, the science simply shows that children who spend time in nature are better off. Period.
Period. Well, I thank you for your insights, Don. I really appreciate that you took the time for us today, and we're looking forward to hearing more of what your research has indicated, or your reviews of the research, so that we can join you in the keynote later on this afternoon.
Good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.